Hey folks, hope you're all doing well. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes just to let some stragglers in, um, and then we'll get cracking.
Nice. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day.
Awesome.
Um, just for those who are coming in, we were talking before about a potential beard off between the three of us. Um, So if time allows, I might put a little poll up at the end of this session. Who's got the best beard? Feel free to vote. Some of us have been doing some sculpting beforehand.
Yeah, I feel a
Um,
little disadvantaged. Mine is more of just it's happened as opposed to there's any kind of design
in
going on.
fairness, we didn't actually make you aware of the beard off. It was just
Yeah, totally
felt
caught off
down.
guard.
So maybe that'll give Tom a few sympathy votes. I'm not sure.
Like Dave, you did say Tom had a good beard.
Oh, it's consistently good. Yeah, that's why I didn't really want to worry him with this most vital of aspects of the webinar. Anyway, that aside, it looks like we've got plenty of people coming in now. So I feel that we can get started. So good morning, everyone, or possibly good afternoon to a few of you. I'm not sure where all of you are joining us from today. Just before we get started, this webinar is being recorded, just so you all know. So we'll try and be on our very best behavior. But a big warm welcome to the first joint webinar, actually, between ShapeBuy and Common Ground. My name's Dave Corlett. I'm the business director at ShapeBuy. And for those of you who don't know ShapeBuy, we are an independent creative agency that helps B2B focused technology companies to stand out through creative thinking and exceptional campaigns, content, brand, and website design. And for those of you who are not aware of Common Ground, our friends at Common Ground, they're a performance-driven B2B marketing agency that helps brands turn SEO, PPC, and content into real pipeline. No fluff, no vanity metrics, just joined up strategy and measurable results. Now, as I first mentioned, both of our agencies work primarily with B2B clients. So we've been chatting for a little while, and it became pretty clear early on in those conversations that there's a hell of a lot of shared wisdom between us in the areas that our skill sets overlap. So we thought, why not share it with you guys? So here we are. We're absolutely thrilled to have you join us today for what promises to be a highly insightful session all about unlocking the full potential of your website, both creatively and commercially. We're going to be diving deep into how to seamlessly bring together brand expression, compelling content, and effective conversion strategies. So if you guys feel that your website isn't performing right now, then hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be leaving with a clear idea of what's not working, along with actionable strategies for creating a far more powerful, distinctive, and effective online experience. Now, before we get started, I just want to introduce our wonderful panelists today. First up is Dan. Daniel Bianchini is the co-founder and CEO of Common Ground. With over a decade of experience leading digital strategies for fast-growing B2B brands, he specializes in building joined-up SEO, PPC, and content campaigns that deliver real commercial impact, not just metrics. Morning, Dan. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Dave. Thanks for the introduction. It's good to be here and finally, get on this webinar. I'm excited.
Excellent. Me too. Now, also joining us is my good friend and colleague at ShapeBuy, Mr. Tom Sydenham, as well as being the owner of, as we said before, an incredible beard, and possibly also the world's most awesome dog, Misty. We love having Misty in the office. Tom is an
I'm
absolutely
hoping we
vital.
don't hear from him today. But
I thought he might make an appearance.
yeah, maybe,
Tom's a
maybe.
really vital part of our ever-growing design team at ShapeBuy. After a couple of stints in editorial design and illustration, Tom turned his attention to branding and joined our motley crew. In his work, he aims to celebrate a company's culture, authenticity, and spirit by crafting an identity that reflects the unique space they occupy. And although he doesn't strictly specialize in web design, Tom does do a lot of work in that space for our clients and attempts really to approach it like any other aspect of design to make it make sense, first of all, and ultimately to make it memorable. So that's our panelists. Huge thanks to both of you guys for taking time out of your days to share your esteemed wisdom with us. Before we dive into our chat with both of these guys here, I'm actually going to drop a quick poll onto your screens. It's just a bit of fun, but it'd be really great if you could pop an answer in just to give us a sense of where you're all at in terms of how you feel about your websites right now. So this is the first time I've ever done this, by the way. Dan's a bit of a veteran, but I don't do a lot of Zoom polls. So
Perfect.
I think we're on. Good, good. Right. So let's get into it. Dan, I'm going to come to you first, if it's okay, with a pretty meaty question to kick us off. For you, what does a high-performing B2B website actually look like today?
I think you started with a big question, so it's like it's go big or go home, I guess. I think that there's so many different things to cover when we sort of talk about a high performing B2B website and what it looks like, especially in sort of today's world. It's evolving really quickly. Obviously, we've got AI coming into it, and obviously the big changes overnight through Google and all the suggestions that are coming out. But I think ultimately what we need a high performing B2B website to do is deliver both on performance but also look great. Okay, so it needs to do both. It can't just be performance over looking good, or it can't be just looking good over performance. It has to have like both sides of the coin, and I think this is where this discussion today is going to be really valuable for some of our listeners, because I feel that they want both, but sometimes they don't understand how that goes and what that looks like. So what does that mean? Essentially what we need is clear messaging, okay, from everywhere. We need intuitive UX, and incredibly fast performance. I mean, in today's age with the Wi-Fi's that we have and all sorts like that, we need to have really good performance of the website. It needs to be speedy, it needs to deliver correctly, it needs to load in the right way. And all of this alongside embedding good SEO best practice. Because if you don't embed it at the start, then it becomes problematic to embed it later on. So it has to be all joined up from the very get-go. But I think that when we talk about performance, and sort of as I sort of put in my bio and what we do here at Common Ground, the website has to drive qualified pipeline. Okay, if it's not driving qualified pipeline, it's just traffic or it's just engagement, you sort of need to re-establish and review what that website's purpose is, because it just might not be doing what you need it to do. And I think this is what we're here today to talk about, is how do we make that website work harder from those sort of the pipeline? How do we sort of take that engagement and then turn it into qualified leads, whether that is direct, immediate, or we're nurturing it through email campaigns, social campaigns, paid campaigns, etc. I think this is all done, and I appreciate that I've got a long answer to this, Dave, so it's a great starting point. Is like there's lots of different angles of content that we can come in. So you've got the different stages, you've got the top of the funnel, the educational pieces, and that's where your engagement is going to be. But it's down at the middle and the bottom of the funnel where we really need to improve from a B2B business perspective. I'm seeing that a lot where we don't focus on that. We always focus on that top of the funnel because it's infinite, it's more exciting, it's potentially more sort of valuable to us who are creating it, thinking, oh, this is going to be great, but it doesn't always bring the pipeline elements. And that's where I really want to focus today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to diving into that aspect of this whole conversation with you a little bit further. But I think as a top line view, that's obviously massively important. I mean, we don't launch websites for the hell of it. We don't run websites, these incredibly time consuming, complicated beasts that are B2B websites for fun. Ultimately, they have to deliver. But also to you, Tom, they also have to deliver in terms of looking the part, because ultimately, first impressions are everything. I had a conversation with someone the other day. It made me really stop and think. They said people eat with their eyes, or people eat with their eyes first. And ultimately, something that is aesthetically pleasing, on brand, really engaging, is likely to keep them there for longer, to kind of start them on that journey. So when you're looking at this whole side of the process, how do you go about balancing something that is aesthetically pleasing and on brand, but also is effective from a conversion point of view?
Yeah, no, yeah, interesting question. I, from my perspective, I try and think of it as those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. For something to truly look good, it needs to work. And in the context of a website, that means it needs to perform well. So even though that I do look at things from a kind of aesthetic slant and how things look and feel, it's the foundation of those things are on how well it works and how well it performs. So to try and like have those things kind of work in tandem and yeah, like I say, not be mutually exclusive is how to truly have the website kind of look and feel as if everything's in its right place and everything's working well. Uh, yeah, so yeah, we try and think of those things in relation to one another.
And so I'm just taking it from my perspective, like you said, taking it in relation to one another and things. How do you look at it from, if I, because I'm coming at it from a marketing point of view, right? And you're going to be going, ah, Dan wants X and Y. How do you sort of take that design and sort of almost get a happy medium in terms of the way that'll work?
Um, yeah, I guess, yeah, like I say, I try, it is to do with balance and it is to do with um, making sure we do hit those expectations from the client. But it's also a bit of a learning curve sometimes with the client that introducing these maybe more sort of aesthetically led devices or maybe like interactive moments or animated moments. These are things that will also drive um, the same metrics. Like we're doing them to implement something that will make things memorable or create some kind of lasting impression, which will result in having people return and get in touch and do those like make those actions, um, yeah, convert.
Um, just a quick one for me. Sorry, guys, I'm having a bit of Wi-Fi issues here, but I think they're resolved now. Dan, when it comes to actually building a website that's optimized for both demand capture and brand experience, what are the kind of elements that you look for first and foremost in order to be able to do that?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that we sort of look at when we're looking at how we build the website or work with people that building the website. So firstly, we need to start with a clear positioning and messaging framework that drives both organic traffic and SEO, but also brand clarity because they can work together. I think there's lots of conversations around how they can't work together, and that's just not true. They can work together, and it's just about how we change that and we bring that in with the right writers, the USPs, the ICPs, the TO4s, all of these different acronyms that I can come up with. But it's really important that we can go through that. We then want to have a performance first design. So we want it fast, we want it mobile first. We want no sort of UX roadblocks and stuff like that. We want to make sure that that's working. And I think one of the other things that we need to consider as we start in building a new website is it needs to be based, or that information architecture needs to be based on like real search intent and user journeys, not just internal organizational structures. What depending on what team you're in, what department in. I mean, that doesn't necessarily reflect user behavior and what they're looking to achieve when they're on the website. So, I mean, those are just two or three of the things that we'd look at off the bat. Obviously, from our point of view, marketing, SEO has to be baked in from day one. It can't be an afterthought because we've been in many a situation where we've worked with companies that are building websites and then they come in and go, oh, Dan, we've just launched this brand new website. Can you just check it over from an SEO point of view? And I've gone in and I've said, unfortunately, guys, we may need to start again. Which is a lot of money that they've just wasted because they haven't considered the impact and making sure that we work together in conjunction with the development team is really important.
And when you're looking at websites that have already been built, do you often see websites that are kind of lean more towards the just focusing on the brand experience and not so much on the elements that you've suggested? Is that a kind of common thing?
Yeah, so we see it from both sides, and it's strange because one side you go in and go they're really brand heavy, and it's really dependent on the company that's built the website. Okay, because if the company that's built the website is more brand led, more sort of design focused, then it is going to be more flashy, if you will, less content, more look and feel. Whereas sometimes you're going to get the opposite, where you might get a really heavy dev team with a little bit of marketing knowledge, because most people think they know SEO, so they try and bake it in from the start. So it can be quite a difficult challenge to have with both sides.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But then on the flip side of that, we do need both sides, obviously, and the ideal scenario is when they're both working in perfect harmony. Tom, obviously, you come in to kind of focus a little bit more on bringing that kind of brand personality into the user experience. Again, what are some of the ways that you approach that when you're first tackling a website project to kind of go, I suppose, beyond just even going beyond kind of logos and colors and some of the basic elements of a brand to kind of bring that personality into the user experience with that, not necessarily to the detriment of anything else, but really just to focus on that kind of ultimate user experience?
Um, I guess I guess like with any medium, it's best to play to its strengths. So we try to utilize what web can do best, which might be sort of micro interactions and animations. But it's everything really. It's tone of voice, as Dan was saying, it's like messaging. But yeah, to rely on what web can bring to an identity, something that print can't, or sort of environmental design can't do. Yeah, we use the medium to its strength. So yeah, like I say, it could be kind of little UI moments, or yeah, making motion a consideration from the offset. Uh, yeah, and not having motion um, just be moving for the hell of it. It needs to be kind of purposeful. Um, it can become distracting, like Dan was saying, just kind of overloading the kind of look and feel and tone of something can become a distraction more than anything. So using it with purpose, having it be impactful, it might be revealing something, especially with our kind of subject matter, can be quite a lot to digest, a lot of information to take in. So we could be using it to reveal bits of information, or it could just be kind of like sequential storytelling. But that is something that web can bring to an identity that other mediums can't. So we try to utilize those.
And
Is
if
there, sorry, Dan, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to just to jump on the point where you talk about like motion for the sake of motion, and we've seen that recently where people are just doing it just because they say that the user sort of draws their eye to it, and that's great. But if it's drawn there and then up here and then all over the place, and suddenly like they're not there to consume the content that you've created, and what they're there to actually consume is content. It's not to consume the motion of going up or down and things like that. I think the other point that you sort of touched on really well is content can have depth in terms of the amount of it. It's the way it's designed in the page to make it look like it broken up, easy for it to be used, which is good from both an SEO perspective because we still need that content to rank for some of these keywords, and some of them are really highly competitive, but we want it to be visually pleasing. We've got to think about that conversion journey and the UX journey as well. So what you said is spot on.
Yeah, it's a total cliche, and it's not always true. It's not always applicable. But when it comes to these things, sometimes less is more. Like a cringe even saying it, but especially when it comes to motion, if you just add these kind of, like we say, like micro interactions, or we're just revealing a little something, and it's that maybe something to catch you off guard, or just make it kind of like stick in the mind a little bit longer. And I think those small things go a long way.
It's a really good point. You know, as Tom said, we work a lot with technology clients in the B2B space, and most of their products are, I mean, we often say their products are invisible. That's not technically true. Obviously, it can be a software platform, but it's not like we've got a Nike sneaker or a really engaging piece of fashion, haute couture fashion to kind of show off, really. Often these products can look and feel, for the best will in the world, quite dry. So we have to find a really engaging way of bringing them to life on a website that's going to be attractive, on brand, engaging, but as you guys have both touched on, also can't detract from the experience of using the site or the effectiveness of the site itself. And leading nicely onto my next point to you, Dan. How can marketers actually tell if their site is underperforming at any level, and what should they be looking for first and foremost in order to kind of measure and track that?
So marketers have a habit of looking at all of the data. Okay, to the point of we get analysis paralysis. And it's you're looking at all sorts, you're looking at analytics, you're looking at search console, you're looking at Hotjar, you're looking at so many different things. But what we need to do is sort of look at the key metrics that are going to actually support understanding how sites are performing, whether that's performing well or underperforming. So we need to measure beyond just traffic in terms of, okay, we're sending lots of traffic, that's great, but I mean, what are the conversion rates? How many qualified leads is that driving? How many is that coming into their CRM? How much of that content is actually being engaged with and understanding that, because that's really important in terms of understanding your user. And then if they're engaged in the content, how do you move them through to the next level? I think one thing to sort of stress is an engagement or a conversion doesn't necessarily have to be at this stage or straight away a MQL or an SQL. It could be somebody signing up for a prospect, a webinar like today, or it could be signing up for a guide or some information. Essentially, somebody that is just putting their hand up and saying, I'm interested in this piece of content. Because as soon as they're interested in that piece of content, that gives you an understanding that actually they are interested in the service or the product that I provide. So we need to sort of move them through a nurturing sequence that could come beyond just a search functionality. It could be email, it could be sort of other activity. So those are just a few things. The other thing is like bounce rates, time on page, where are they exiting from? And just bringing that information in as well is really important, because if they're coming to a page and they're bouncing straight off, or they're coming to a page and visiting a couple and then bouncing, you just need to understand what the reasons is. Sometimes it may be that you've given them the answer, and that's good. Okay, if they come into the page and you've given them the answer, that's you've done your job at that stage. They've known that common ground shaped by provided me the answer that I need at this point, and that's a positive thing from a marketing for later on their comeback. So it's just some of those things that you'd want to really navigate through and investigate on a regular basis.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm throwing this one at you a little bit unprepared, but are there any examples of sites that you've either worked on or developed recently, where probably worked on more than developed, I guess, but where it's been clear what specifically hasn't been working, or conversely, if you've been impressed with the site that you've kind of had to look at recently where something's working particularly well?
So some of the things that I see, the reason that we go into a lot of businesses is to pick up underperforming websites. That's one of the reasons that they want to talk to us, because unfortunately their websites are not performing, and it's not because they're not creating the content. They're potentially creating that content without any thought behind it, understanding of what it's looking to do, and sort of any optimization. And it's always based on the top of the funnel. For us, for me specifically, I always like to flip that upside down and go, right, I want to focus on the bottom of the funnel, because there is a finite number of terms or sort of phrases that people are looking for to buy your service or product. If we can get that working at the starting point, we can then move up the funnel and we can expand the amount of content types that we can create until we get to the very top where it's infinite, right? You're looking at different types of content. It's an infinite type of element. But if you start at the top, it's harder to make your way down to the bottom because you're constantly coming up with new ideas. So that sort of doesn't allow you to do it. I mean, that's some of the things that I see quite a bit of underperforming sites.
Yeah, that's super great advice. I love that approach to the funnel in particular. What you need to prioritize first, essentially, to get things rolling. Just staying on the subject of content, Tom, from a design perspective, we look at various different types of content in various different ways. But particularly from a website content point of view, how, in your view, does design thinking help to make content not just better looking, but actually more valuable to that user journey?
I think from my perspective, there's often an impulse to try and get as much information in front of the user as quickly as possible. Some kind of I don't say lack of confidence, but like an urgency to ensure that they get what they need. Like Dan says, they get what they came for as quickly as possible.
I think
But
it can be a lack of confidence sometimes, though, can't it, really? Genuinely.
yeah. but from my perspective, is I think the best thing to do is maybe almost the opposite, is to slow things down and make things, like I say, kind of feel a bit more purposeful, a bit more, yeah, confident, and kind of have things unfold in a way that, like I keep coming back to, but feels memorable and yeah, feels confident. I think especially like we say with the kind of technical products that we're having to talk about and the more kind of like technical stories and that we're having to tell, I think it's quite important to yeah, pace things out and not have the user feel overwhelmed. I think if the user's kind of shopping around looking for the best product to go for, they can all begin to sort of meld into one. And I think we have the opportunity to kind of pull things apart and actually show the differences between them, and not kind of fall into the regular traps.
Yeah, absolutely. I just shared a link in the chat to a project that Tom and his team worked on recently for one of our clients, Rubric. And I feel it's a lovely example of how to really space that content out. This is slightly different from, this is quite a specific piece of content telling a particular story about a particular challenge for their audience. But just the way in which, I love the way in which that storytelling is really given so much space to express itself within a web environment. So I didn't tell Tom I was going to share that, so he might be a bit rosy cheeked, but it's amazing. Really, really nice piece. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just interesting just to scroll through that is it's almost like when people are scared of white space. It's like you see lots of white space and things like that. It's like, well, why is all this white space? It feels like you are just scared of having it there, even if you're trying to separate the content pieces. And I mean, obviously, I'm no designer, so I'm not an expert in that, but it's one of those things that comes to my mind is, oh, there's a lot of space there. But as you sort of talk it through and you see the process and the journey being made, you can understand the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, really, it really shouldn't be considered something as if you have nothing to say just because you're pausing and thinking for a moment. Like it's a it's an opportunity to let everything kind of catch up with itself and truly let the user kind of digest the information.
Yeah, I do apologize, guys. First, it was Wi-Fi issues. Now, some guys upstairs drilling holes in my kid's bedroom wall. So I do apologize if that comes through on the recording.
Can't hear anything.
Actually, we can edit out the recording. That's all good. But maybe the live event, not so much. So I actually wanted to move on to keep the conversation around that kind of that design thinking and user experience, because I do think that obviously Common Ground and Shaped by tackle different parts of website projects, but when they come together holistically is when clients have the best experience. But Tom, when you get a project, I mean, I suppose in a similar vein to the one that I shared on the chat with Rubric, a brief that kind of has that effectiveness component at its real core, we need this piece of content to work. But ultimately, we also, I mean, and a great thing about this piece as well was that it was so fun and memorable and experiential as well. To you, when you're looking at a project like that, why is it so important to really push that brief to kind of express that fun, memorable side of it?
Yeah, good question. I think with a lot of briefs that we get through and once talking to the client, I think there is a kind of impulse to maybe align with their competitors. It might be a matter of like kind of catching up with where they're at and where they kind of see themselves, and we see ourselves more like these guys, we see ourselves like these guys. And I think that is important to an extent. We want the user to land on the site and they kind of get as quickly as possible like this is what these guys do. And how you do that is kind of fitting in the space. But something that we're always kind of bearing in mind is that we should be finding in that brief and with that client their kind of specific outlook and perspective and like their kind of unique approach to what they're doing. It's like why they exist, right? Like they shouldn't yeah, for them to do truly well, it's to kind of be offering something that others can't. So we try and find that, and find out how that looks and feels. And I think that's really what pushes all of our briefs forward and ends up being the most kind of impactful work is finding that unique perspective, and then it's how to articulate that perspective through whether it be motion or little interactive moments. Um, but doing that, like making sure that it feels authentic to them, and then that way we can kind of sing their praises with conviction because we kind of like we know what's special about you guys.
And do you find that when you have those conversations with clients, about, okay, the brief says you actually want to kind of align yourselves with these competitors or with these brands in this space, but actually our gut feel is to push against that brief and say we need to find that authentic bold, as we quite often call it internally, that's unique to you. Do you find that there's a bit of hesitancy or pushback to that, or are they generally quite receptive to where you want to take them?
I think like rightfully so, it may appear that we're being quite playful and a bit loose and fast with their company, but it's really not that. It's like, and it requires a bit of education from our side to kind of make them we kind of test things and show them different routes, and this is a bit closer to home, this might feel a bit more familiar, and this is kind of progressive, this is where we kind of see you in a couple of years and kind of a bit more future proof perhaps, but it's yeah, a little cheesy, but like it's a journey that we're kind of going through together and making sure that it all kind of makes sense at every step of the way. We're not like throwing anyone into anything that doesn't feel right. It's something that is very is maybe the outcome is quite playful, but it might be like behind the scenes it's very methodological.
Yeah, and again, oh, hang on, my drilling guys started up again. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that internally. That was a bit of a kind of almost rhetorical question from my side because I've seen that approach play out quite a lot in the studio in terms of you guys presenting those approaches. This is something that is quite familiar to you guys. This is something that's a bit more kind of further away. And it's amazing how clients' eyes light up when you present the more progressive option.
Yeah, for sure.
They never really considered it, but actually now they've seen it visually expressed. Suddenly, that's the area, that's the route they want to go down.
Do you ever see, obviously there's quite a large brand recently that had a very progressive ad campaign and rebrand and stuff like that with that. I mean, do you see any pushback from some of the work when you're trying to push that progressive nature?
I think as long as we follow the right steps and ensure that they're coming along on the journey with us, then making everyone feel like they've participated in where we got to. Um, we don't often see too much kind of um, negativity once things are kind of on up on their feet and out there, like because we've ensured that everyone's kind of felt involved, which is really important. We kind of make sure, especially a lot of the clients that we're working with have internal design teams that we're working with. So as we're going through the process, we're making sure that we're not giving them something that they won't be able to run with once we're out of the picture, making sure that they are as into it as we are. Um, and it's actually usable stuff. It's no good if one of our team illustrates or renders this crazy thing that then people can't then run with after. So we
Mm.
make sure that it's a very usable kind of identity.
I think we could do a whole other webinar on this topic, and maybe we will one day. But the one thing I would say is that we often talk about evolution versus revolution, and quite often we actually genuinely try and push clients away from the revolution option because they've got so much brand equity in their current identity and brand that you'd quite often might get a new CMO who comes in and says, right, my first job is to rebrand the whole business. Let's do it. And actually, it's 100% the wrong move. So, but yeah, I'd love to do a webinar on this one day. We do quite a few anyway, but I'd love to chat about this topic with you a bit, Dan, and be interested to see how you approach it from your perspective. Back to the topic in hand. Dan, I wondered how we've obviously spoken a lot about creative, obviously brand messaging comes into that as well. Where does SEO intersect with those elements from your point of view?
So SEO for me is quite a central piece because you talk about the research and everything like that. And some people on the call might go, well, of course you're going to say that because you're in the marketing element. But for me, it needs to be centralized, and it's part of your copy. It's a part of your technical aspect. It's part of your promotional aspects. But what people sort of see for SEOs, it's quite bland. It's quite boring, and it doesn't have to be. Especially when you're sort of matching like language with the intent of the search and things like that. I'm going through a project at the moment with a B2B brand where we are refreshing their website, and that means that we are looking at the focus of the page, looking at the intent of the page, and we're writing new copy. But that copy doesn't have to be boring. So we're looking at it can look at emotive. I mean, how are we making it more emotive for the user, the intent? How can we make it allow a journey within the page while also hitting all of the SEO elements, like obviously we need to target certain keywords, we need to look at the intent of those keywords, make sure the copy's there and everything like that, but it needs to be that emotive. So that's really important for us. I think creative can also bring SEO to life, and that's some things that I struggle with some SEOs where they go, oh, we just need this long length of content. And another project we're working on at the moment is where actually they're going for a redesign. They are looking at a really competitive term, one of the most competitive terms in the world, or specifically in the UK. And they have like 3,000, 4,000 words on their page. The design team are coming in going, we need to make this more UX friendly, conversion based friendly. The SEOs are going, we can't change this content because like if we change it, we're not going to be visible anymore. And there's that button of heads and how that works. So what I'm trying to sort of mediate and sort of talk about is like we can do both. We can design it in a way that is creative and utilizes some of the conversion elements towards the top. Towards the top, we can bring in different design elements such as accordions if you want, and sort of blocks that you may split this content out. And then lower down, we can still have the length and the depth of the content. It's just how we bring that and work together. So there is a lot of things that we can be doing, but it is meaning about collaboration and early collaboration, not last minute collaboration or after the fact collaboration, which is what we see a lot.
In terms of collaboration, are there generally key individuals or kind of team members on the client side that you would absolutely need to have involved from the outset, or does it, I guess it depends on the business?
Yes, it is business dependent and the size of the business as well, because you're going to have different structures. So we work with a range of like digital marketers through the CMOs, but we're also working with product managers as well and product marketers. So it is a range. If you're in a slightly smaller business, if you're looking like anywhere between 2 to 10 million, then you may just have one or two in that marketing team, and they're predominantly looking at the sales and things like that. So it is a challenge to get the right people in. But from our point of view, what we try to do is educate and sort of learn and sort of bring them on the journey. We've talked a lot about the journey today, but bring them on a journey of saying, this is the sort of things that we need. These are the things that we believe we should have in place at this point in time, and work collaboratively then with like a project manager that says, okay, we're doing this, this, and this. Where do you fit in? And we want that up front rather than afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, guys, I'm a little bit conscious of time. I've really enjoyed this chat so far. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, despite frantic drilling in the background of my house. I've got one question each for you, and then I'm going to end the poll. Maybe we'll have a little chat about some of the results of that poll and then take some questions from the audience. But I'm going to finish with a question for each of you. Tom, I'll come to you first. Might be a bit of a meaty question for both of you, actually. But my question to you is, what are some often overlooked opportunities to inject moments of delight into the B2B website experience?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's often the small stuff. It's once we've ensured that all of the important content is all in its right place and everything's presented properly. And like Dan says, it's not an afterthought. It's something that needs to be integrated along through that process. But it's the animations and kind of micro interactions that can leave a kind of lasting impression. For me, it's kind of all about slowing down the user slightly. Maybe being kind of pleasantly surprised or kind of disrupted, but in a good way, where it kind of leaves them maybe thinking, or yeah, like I say, at least leaves some kind of impression on them, something to return for, something to share. Uh, but yes, it's the kind of small stuff at the end that does that for me.
What do you mean by micro interaction?
So it might be so as Dan said, like what I would consider an interaction would be something that is almost integral to the for the user to get the content that they need. It might be some kind of accordion or carousel. What I mean by a micro interaction is it could be like a hover state that just reveals a little bit more information, but not totally essential to the journey. It might be the cursor changing or an animation kind of interacting with the cursor. It's just these little moments that make the thing feel a bit more alive, gives a better impression of the brand and their personality. Uh, Might just kind of make everything feel a bit more human, which is nice.
Yeah, it's essential, really. I mean, actually, I think that that's something that a lot of B2B, it's an opportunity, I guess, that a lot of B2B websites kind of are missing. I rarely see that. I think one theme from this conversation that's starting to emerge is don't be boring. And I know that's quite a lofty and almost uninsightful piece of advice because how do you not make it boring? I think we've covered a lot of that stuff today, but there's so much more. But I think that's a really good example of how to liven things up a little bit for the pleasant experiences of your users. We see a lot in apps, obviously, particularly kind of financial services apps at the moment, little moments of delight here and there, but B2B websites not so much. And it leads me nicely on to the question I had for you, Dan, which is for you, what is the biggest opportunity that most B2B websites are missing?
Yeah. So I'm going to have two. One is something that you can sort of look at now and do, and what I focus on a lot at this point in time. And one is a little bit more forward thinking. So, firstly, I think we've touched upon it, I've touched on it a lot, is focus on that bottom of the funnel, middle of the funnel content. Make sure it answers the buyers, it does everything that you need it to do from a buyer perspective, an SEO perspective, a conversion perspective to try and deliver as many leads, MQLs, intent-based engagement activity as possible. It's being left. You do it once and you leave it and you focus on the other side of the content funnel. And we just need to get back to doing that. The other one, which is sort of related, but we need to know how we manage AI going forward. Now, we haven't mentioned it in this call, and it could be a whole other topic and webinar, but obviously with the big changes overnight from Google in terms of the AI mode and all ChatGPT and all these other things, it's like, how do we get B2B businesses to be utilizing LLMs, AI chats, all these different type of things to drive more leads? Okay, I mean, where does search go and how does that look sort of going forward from a B2B perspective? So I think understanding that whilst focusing on the bottom of the content. Now, I don't think SEO is going to go away. I think it's just the search functionality and the way it's going to be used is going to be slightly different, and we need to understand how that behavior is going to change and how we impact that and bring that into our B2B websites.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, guys, I think we're going to end the questions there. Thanks so much for that massively insightful conversation. We'll carry it on in some way, shape, or form because I wanted to look quickly at the poll results that I've got here. So I'm just going to end that poll. It's not such great news for myself and you, Tom. Everyone's website seemed to be great. Actually, no, we've got three people who say they're struggling with both being off-brand and converting poorly. But for the majority of people, their website looks great, but converts quite poorly. So, Dan, I know we've touched on a lot of this stuff anyway, but what's the first thing? If somebody came to you, client came to you and said, right, my website looks great, but it converts poorly, when you get under the hood, what are you starting with in your diagnosis?
I guess the first thing I want to do is get a second opinion on whether the website actually looks great. Because I know that we all have subconscious biases towards the things that we do are amazing. So I think that would be one of the things. I want to understand then where the performance, what isn't. I mean, what does success look like for somebody? Is it realistic? first and foremost, and what they're trying to achieve. And then how do we walk back to understanding where things fall over in that point in time? So it will be a little bit of analysis around data. Is it the visibility is a problem? Is it the traffic is just not qualified because visibility is maybe targeting wrong terms and elements? Is it the fact that you don't have CTAs, you don't have the right sort of conversion paths or user journeys? Those are the sort of things that we'd want to look at almost straight away.
Nice. And for the one person who said, honestly, it hasn't been touched in ages, maybe you want to come and talk to Shape by and Common Ground to get that fixed. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for taking part in the poll if you did. Do get your questions in. If you've got anything pressing that you'd like to chat to Tom or Dan about, we do have two. One just says chat is disabled. I'm sorry, the technical guys above me have disabled that for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but I do apologize if you wanted to chuck something in there. If it was bad feedback about the link I shared, though, don't bother. But the one question we do have, cheeky one, but if I only have time and budget to tackle a few things on our website in the next quarter, what are the highest impact changes you'd recommend to improve performance quickly? I do want to share that with both of you, Tom. I don't know whether you've got some thoughts on that, but I'll start with you, Dan, if that's okay, because it's a bit more performance based.
It's quite a broad question, to be honest, because there's lots of things that could be wrong and not. I think I would firstly understand where, if we're looking at leads, what's the fallout? Okay, so what number of leads you're getting, what's the quality of those leads, and then work back from that point of view. Is it a particular conversion page? If it is, do we need to look at the messaging? Are we targeting the right traffic for that particular page? And is it the right sort of, are they the right people that you want anyway? That's where I'd start. It's a really broad question, so it's a really vague answer. But if they want to get in touch, then obviously I'm happy to have a more of a detailed chat.
Yeah, no worries. Tom, if someone came to ShapeBuy and said our website's just not right from a look and feel perspective, where would you start looking to try and rectify?
I think I think something that we could really add some value on is taking a look at their current guidelines and seeing if we can do anything to them to make them just a little bit more robust and usable. So, as I've touched on, something that I really appreciate doing is being able to design something that then can be handed over and worked with for kind of years to come, and having other designers take it on and doing their thing with it. So it might be introducing some kind of motion principles or just kind of filling out their kind of icon libraries or illustration libraries. Um, yeah, giving them like a more substantial toolkit if they need it.
Yeah, we had a project opportunity quite recently where it was really obvious that obviously, it's quite tempting for sometimes to for someone to approach a creative agency like us and then feel like we're only really giving them design solutions when the problems might run a little bit deeper than that. But sometimes the design issues and challenges within a site are so obvious that they desperately need fixing. And then you look at the brand guidelines and you understand why everything feels so, quite frankly, boring and limited and rigid. Is because they don't have the tools at their disposal to be able to say, well, we want to build this out a little bit more, but it needs to be on brand, and our brand guidelines just aren't built for this. So do you find that often, Tom, that you kind of get under the hood and actually some of the guidelines from a design and brand point of view are that's a core issue?
Yeah, for sure. They can often appear at a glance quite limiting. But something me and the team really enjoy doing is taking what they have, kind of maybe looking at it from a different angles and different perspectives and seeing what we can draw out of it. So it, we're not doing anything that kind of goes against what they already have in the works. And like you say, like brand equity is really important. And we're not looking to like kind of delete anything or override anything, but kind of take it and run with it and have a bit more fun with it that allows them to kind of express their messages and what they do with just a bigger arsenal.
100%. Absolutely. Um, Right, guys, it doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming in. So I don't know if any of you got any final thoughts on this topic. Don't worry if not, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
I think for me, it's just, I mean, it just shows how it's not a single element that's going to make your website work harder. It's multiple facets that need to come together and work collaboratively to make the most out of it. And that's, I mean, this is where I think, obviously, with our work with you guys at ShapeBuy, it's really important that that sort of continues, and sort of when you are looking at your websites, you're looking at it from a polished design perspective and a marketing perspective to really make your website work harder.
Hmm. Yeah, I think for me, just having the kind of dialogue between what we both do, being really kind of open and transparent, and making sure that all these important things, all these facets are kind of in the room at the very beginning, and making sure that we're all kind of on the same journey. It kind of makes sure that the end thing will perform better, and don't consider either one kind of a secondary thought.
Spot on. Right. Thank you very much, guys. Listen, if you enjoyed this webinar, do sign up to Common Ground's mailing list, ShapeBuy's mailing list. Come and follow us on LinkedIn. We do plenty of these, both individually and hopefully going forward together. I'd like to say this is a big success. I really enjoyed the conversation anyway. But hopefully we'll be doing more of these, so do keep tabs on what we're up to. Follow Dan on LinkedIn, Tom as well. Myself, if you want some really boring takes on Jaguar's rebrand for the 20th time. But other than that, it just remains to say thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And if you have any other website challenges, do get in touch with Dan, myself, or Tom, or the team at Common Ground and ShapeBuy. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.